The matter before the court is the State of Minnesota versus Franklin. This is 27 CR 23-22276. Would the attorneys note their appearance for the record?
Good morning, Your Honor. Kelly Gardner and Katie Anderson, both Assistant Hennepin County Attorneys for the state on all files.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Peter Martin, M-E-R-T-I-N. I appear here on behalf of my client, Kentarios Franklin.
And from the department?
In general, it was a probation. I added the PSI.
Well, good morning to all counsel. Good morning, Ms. Williams. Good morning, Mr. Franklin. This matter is before the court for sentencing, as the defendant has entered a plea of guilty to assault in the first degree. The pre-sentence investigation was ordered by the court. It's been received and reviewed. Are the parties ready to go forward?
State is ready.
We are, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Gardner.
Thank you, Your Honor. First and foremost, we have the victim in this case, Ms. Amber Arndt. She's on Zoom. She would like to read her victim impact statement to the court and the parties.
She may. Go right ahead.
Ms. Arndt, if you can turn on your audio, let us know that you can hear you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Arndt, you are welcome to go forward with your victim impact statement. I can hear you.
Okay. 2.5 years ago, when a friend asked me to go out to dinner with her, I had no idea I would end up getting shot, almost die, and me and my family's world would be destroyed. When we left the restaurant, I heard pop, pop, pop. I grabbed my friend's hand and turned, and within seconds I was shot in the back. It felt like an explosion in my shoulder, and the pain was blinding. I remember the entire gory aftermath. I hit the ground like a ton of bricks. I was laying face down in shock, unable to breathe normally. My arm was instantly paralyzed and wedged underneath my body. My voice gurgled when I looked up at my friend and told her to call 911. I started bleeding from my mouth, and I realized I was possibly dying from internal bleeding and injuries. I remember thinking about how sad it would be for my son to have to tell people that his mother died when he was only 2 years old. It was heartbreaking. Nothing is more terrifying than lying there waiting to see what happens when you die. I've never felt so scared or helpless and out of control in my entire life. I couldn't move or breathe. It felt like an eternity for the ambulance to get there. The bullet fractured my left shoulder blade, traveled up across my neck, and ended up lodged in my right lower jaw. It caused my lung to collapse, which required a chest tube, damaged the nerves in my neck and brachial plexus, which paralyzed my arm, dissected my carotid artery, resulting in a pseudoaneurysm, which puts me at risk for future stroke, fractured my C6 vertebra in my neck, bruised my voice box and vocal cords, and caused my left eye to droop. I had a huge wound in my back that required packing and dressing changes for weeks. I was on a ventilator for 5 days and in the ICU for 7 days, and hospitalized a total of 11 days. The degree of illness and misery I felt in the hospital was more than I knew possible. I woke up during anesthesia in the ER and was unable to move or talk, and had no idea if I was in the middle of surgery in the operating room or what was happening. The next morning I woke up intubated and restrained. Usually patients are sedated while on a ventilator, but I was awake the entire time. I had to try to breathe with the machine while a tube was down my throat all the way to my lungs. I developed ICU psychosis, which was so disturbing and frightening. I barely slept for days and was not allowed to eat any food or even take a sip of water for 7 days. I underwent multiple painful and scary medical procedures and tests. I was so weak from being bedridden for so long that I was unable to walk when I was finally able to try. The amount of pain I experienced was completely traumatizing. People with brachial plexus injuries have been known to commit suicide from the constant and excruciating nerve pain it causes. The pain woke me up every hour at night for months. When I got home from the hospital, I was incapacitated and unable to do anything for myself. I couldn't take care of my son. My husband had to take off work for a month, and our families had to travel back and forth from out of state to help us for months. We had to place our son in daycare part-time in the fall because I was unable to care for him. The required medications caused problems with mental focus, memory, word finding, and severe fatigue. The following Christmas, I was hospitalized after developing a serious infection and abscess near the retained bullet in my jaw. In January 2022, I underwent surgery to remove the bullet from the back of my mouth through an incision under the back of my tongue. The recovery was miserable and painful. Then the following summer, I was hospitalized 2 more times for infections deep in my neck due to retained bullet fragments near my spine. It has been over 2 years now, and I'm still trying to envision what my future looks like. It is overwhelming. My career as a physician assistant that I worked so hard for was destroyed. I don't think I'll ever be able to work in the medical field again since I'm now terrified of blood. I've been under the care of over 16 different medical specialists and still have frequent doctor and therapy appointments. We have paid thousands of dollars in medical bills and child care. I'll have chronic pain for the rest of my life, which not only has a huge impact on me, but also my family. My arm is still very weak, and I'm in constant pain from the nerve damage. I have major PTSD. I still relive what happened every day and have nightmares. I no longer feel safe anywhere. I'm afraid of strangers, guns, and public spaces. I have severe anxiety and frequently feel vulnerable, scared, trapped, and alone. I have trouble leaving the house and making decisions. Getting shot was the worst day of my life. The emotional and physical trauma I endured has almost been unbearable. The suffering my parents, husband, son, and our families went through is immeasurable. It still makes me so sad to think about my husband receiving a phone call stating that his wife was suddenly in critical condition in the hospital. It feels like all of our happiness was sucked up by a vacuum that day. The fact that my son's life has been forever changed is unacceptable. I will never be the same mom he started out with. And deserves. 6 years ago, my husband and I moved to Minnesota from Chicago to get away from gun violence and raise our family somewhere safe. I will never feel safe in the Twin Cities again. The saddest part is that it feels like our lives and dreams were shattered for absolutely nothing. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Arndt, thank you for that statement. Ms. Gardner.
Your Honor, the city of Minneapolis is home to over 20 major criminal street gangs. Minneapolis is up and coming and unique because of its hybrid status. When the younger members of the gang don't like what's going on, they don't like the location, their profits, and the crimes that are being committed, they start their own. And the younger hybrid gangs don't have a code. They just simply have the crimes that they commit of aggravated robbery, assaults, drug dealing, anything that you can think of involving a gun. In June of 2021, in this situation, that's exactly what happened. The crimes that these gangs are committing are no longer under the guise of darkness or specific gang-related territories. 26th and Nicollet was never a gang-related territory prior to 2021. Unfortunately, on a Tuesday, on a very sunny day under broad daylight, a suburban mom was hit by a bullet that was meant for an opposing gang member in a drive-by shooting. She was over a block away when Contarios Franklin began blindly shooting behind himself. As you heard, she worked very hard for a career. A physician's assistant takes years of education, training, and experience. Her career, her family, even being a mother was taken away simply because of the city of Minneapolis and what it's become in gun violence. What's more, having a career in the medical field and watching the body-worn cameras, Ms. Arndt actually knew what was happening as she was shot, as she began internally bleeding, as officers began to try and help her. She was even assisting the officers in advising what was currently happening. The fear for her was even more, knowing biologically what was happening next. Once the bullet was able to be removed from Ms. Arndt, we were able to match it to the firearm that Contarios Franklin had on that day, that he shot blindly a block away, that was then traded to other individuals in the Twin Cities, and was later located in a completely different city. This gun trading incident and situation is also now the norm, and what we see in most of these shootings and incidents. What's different in this case, and why the state believes that this is a just sentence. For the crime of assault in the first degree, the legislature gives a guidelines of 74 to 103 months in prison. The state offered and agreed to a sentence at the bottom of that range of 74 months. First and foremost, from the beginning of this case, learning from Ms. Arndt, she wanted justice. She wanted a sentence that would be punishment, but also holding all of the shooters in this case accountable. She never once wanted the maximum sentence or to ruin any one of these young men's lives. Prior to and after the plea hearing in this case, Mr. Franklin expressed through his attorney, who expressed to me his remorse. Even before the pre-sentence investigation was written, he was sorry. The second part that was different in this case is Mr. Franklin expressed that Ms. Arndt should never be afraid of him again, that he was sorry for what happened, and he hoped that she was able to never fear him or any other of these members at that incident. It's not lost on the state the amount of work and effort that Mr. Franklin has done in the last few years. I hope that when he returns to the community, he continues to make it better as he has done in the last 2 years. For those reasons, the state asks that you follow the plea agreement in this case and sentence Mr. Franklin to 74 months with the Department of Corrections. Ask that restitution previously filed and requested in the amount of $1,625 be ordered joint and several with the co-defendants in this case, and I can get you those court file numbers if necessary. There are other tracking files for Mr. Franklin, and the state previously, I believe, had moved to dismiss those pursuant to this plea agreement and sentence. And I defer to Your Honor if you have any other questions for us as the state or probation.
Do we have the restitution order on file in this case?
I will look into that right now, Your Honor.
All right.
And if it has not been, I will do so during this hearing or immediately after.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, anything else from the department? Of course, I have read the PSI.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Martin.
Your Honor, may I have just a brief moment? Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Martin.
Your Honor, I agree with Ms. Gardner in terms of my client's insistence throughout this proceeding that he is so sorry that Ms. Arndt has suffered and continues to suffer as a result of his actions back in 2021. We have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation together. We have no additions, corrections to that, but my client would like to make a very brief statement. Thank you.
Mr. Franklin.
Hey, hope you're going to move this today. I just want to say that I keep hearing this gang member thing. I'm not a gang member. I'm scared of things. To do work. And I just haven't, had my firearm to protect myself because I've been robbed 2 times in that neighborhood. Other than that, I take 100% responsibility for that day. I don't know how she feel or how she would feel, but I've been a victim of straight gunfire before, so I know some of how that, but it's different. So I just want to say I'm sorry, and I hope you continue to, grow and get back to your field, hopefully.
Well, Mr. Franklin, as an initial matter, let me say that I appreciate and embrace the statement made by the prosecution's office about the work that you have done in the last couple of years to try to take a different path in life. And I'm sure one of the things you have learned in that is that when you do a harm, there's a price to be paid, and that you need to take accountability for that and pay that price. I hope you understand by Ms. Arndt's pretty eloquent statement today the damage, the harm, the hurt you have caused not only to her, but to her family, to her child, to her husband, to those that love her, and to those that know her. Because, you know, you've done a lot of damage. And there's a price to be paid for that, and you will pay that price today. It is, I suspect, well, Ms. Arndt has shown great, perhaps more compassion than I could muster under the circumstances, and I want to give her credit for that. And you were probably the beneficiary of that compassion. Perhaps once this debt is paid, the best thing you can do is to become a peaceful and contributing part of society instead of somebody who takes from it. Because so far, you have taken a lot. I hope that you do. Mr. Franklin, you have entered a plea of guilty to assault in first degree. You have waived your right to a trial, and you have told me enough for me to believe that you are guilty of that offense, and so I accept your plea of guilty, adjudicate you guilty, and sentence you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 74 months. Against that sentence, you're entitled to credit for 16 days they've already spent in custody. $50 fine, $75 surcharge, $3 law library fee. Restitution in the amount of $1,625 to be joint and several with the two co-defendants, Mr. Ware in 27 CR 21-15542, Mr. Patterson in 27 CR 22-11334. If you have not already done so, you must provide a DNA sample, and I will remind you that you may never possess, transfer, or use a firearm for the rest of your life. This sentence is to be executed forthwith. The deputies are here and will be taking you into custody. Is there anything else from the record?
Nothing to say.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. That'll conclude this hearing.
Thank you.
Your Honor, will you file the dismissal on the entertaining files?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. This matter will be in recess.